Hello and welcome to the final episode of This Is Halloween Reviews for the year. And sneaking in at the last minute is this film. This was not a movie that I had intended to review. I've never seen it up until a few days ago, but some dedicated fans of mine really wanted me to watch it, and I did with them. And after thinking about it, I decided this was a film that was worth talking about. There's some really creative stuff going on in here, and I think it's enough to warrant a conversation. So, kind of sneaking in right as the gate is closing is this film. So, this is not a movie that I would have watched on my own. I think sometimes it's good that I have friends with very different tastes than me, because they will coax me into seeing things I otherwise would have ignored. And this film is one such case, simply because, we've heard the song, we all know the words, he doesn't like horror movies. I don't. And if I had to put a list of the types of horror movies I didn't like, zombie films would be, right near the top. I think it's one below, like, the torture porn. Saw and, Hostel. Yes, I know Saw had a story, but you know what I mean. And the reason I'm not a fan of zombies and zombie-related material is pretty much because they're boring. It's hackneyed. It's been done, and it is tired. And I'm glad we are kind of getting out of the zombie phase we were in for so long, but it's still there, and it is just... so many of the films are exactly alike. It's a bunch of people, from different walks of life, different people, usually the archetypes, all stuck in some confined space, a mall, a house, whatever, while the hordes come and get them, and eventually the zombies are going to break in, everyone's going to die, and shit. They're very formulaic, and I don't dig them. But, now here's the thing about formula. It's a time saver. You go back to the days of the Commedia dell'arte and the stock plots and the stock characters, so that the audience would have a even frame of reference no matter where the film went, the performance went, which means that it left the actors with a lot of creativity to play around inside of those confines. And I think formula can be a very useful thing sometimes, especially when you use it to do something really interesting. And I think that is what this film does. It uses the basic zombie concept to tell a pretty fascinating and really original story. So what is the story? Well, first thing I'm just gonna say this, and you can chalk it up to me being an ignorant American and all of that. I cannot pronounce these actors' names or these character names. I tried, and I'm going to butcher them so horribly. I just feel like it's a complete... I don't know what's more insulting to them, me not using their names or me trying to use their names and butchering them so horribly. So I'm going to err on the other side. So I can't really use any of the actors or character names. So please forgive me for that. So the main character in the story is a guy whose character could have come out of any number of Hallmark movies. He is a busy businessman who is just so busy with business. He's ruthless, he's in a cutthroat business, and he is very neglectful of his beautiful, large-eyed, sweet daughter, whom he has become very estranged from and who wants to go back to be with her mother, who lives in Busan. This guy is essentially Tim Allen from any 90s Disney movie. All right? But he finally decides that he will take the daughter to Busan to go back with the mother. So they board the train, and, timing is everything. And unfortunately, they have planned this trip for the same weekend that the zombie apocalypse had been booked. And zombies begin to attack. It begins as a small thing, and of course, grows exponentially. There are zombies find their way onto the train, and the passengers have to find a way to keep those zombies contained while trying to find a place to get off the train, where is safe, where is quarantined. You pretty much get where it's coming from. So, that's our basic story. Here's what's really cool about this movie is, like I said, it does some really fun things with the concept and with the environment that it's selected. A train, a fast-moving train, which is claustrophobic, narrow. It's constantly in motion. So even when there is a respite in the action, you're still in a feeling of motion. So it feels like it's still going at a breakneck pace. So this allows them to have the softer scenes and the quieter scenes, but still the tension is always there because the train is always in motion. And when it stops, that's even more tense because you've become used to it being in motion. So when it stops, you know something's not right. So a really clever idea for a location that I don't think has been done much, or the idea of a constantly moving location. Furthermore, this is the film that I want to show to anybody who says that it's impossible to make a good video game movie. Because this is essentially a video game movie. In that a lot of the mechanics and a lot of the scenes in it are, they feel like something you would play in a video game. For instance, one of the really clever things I like is that these zombies in this lore can only attack when they see you. So if you put a blinder up, they're like horses. You put a blinder up, out of sight, out of mind. They don't see you, they're not going to attack, they're just going to lumber there. So when the lights go out and they're in the dark, they won't attack you unless they hear you. So anytime the train goes through a tunnel, there's this long sequence where the various passengers get separated. One group is in the front, and a couple of folks are in the back, and the folks in the back are trying to make their way to the front. So what they have to do is they have to time this with every time the train goes through a tunnel as to when they're going to move and when they're going to throw something to distract the zombies so they clear out of the doorway so they can get through it. There's a sequence where they're crawling along the luggage rack over top of them. It is some really clever stuff. And again, it feels like a video game. And anybody who's played any kind of stealth video game knows that feeling of when you've stealthed past every enemy in the room but one, and that one guy is the one that fucking hears you. You know that tension, and this film captures it. I don't think there was a tie-in video game for this, but there should have been. And it's an excellent example of how you can use video game mechanics to tell a really compelling story and make the action really fun. And then there are times when they just go full belt at the zombies. My favorite character in the movie, and again, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name or the character's name, but he's going to be in the Eternals film for Marvel if we ever get new movies again. He's this really big dude. He's an athlete of some kind. He's actually from I think what it said on IMDb. He's a martial arts trainer or a coach of some kind. But he's this big dude, and he is awesome. He is just the most awesome character. I can't even describe his awesomeness. This is a guy who fucking just goes up and punches zombies or elbows them out of the way, and it's like you don't see that in a lot of movies. So you have like actual chase scenes and fight scenes where this dude is just fucking the zombies up. It's really cool. So of course because he's the cool character, he's gonna die. Spoiler alert, it's a zombie film, everybody dies. I mean, I don't think that's really a spoiler. But they do some other interesting things, like when they decide they're gonna go and try to make that journey from the rear end of the train to the front, they find duct tape and shit, and they're taping their arms up to give some kind of padding for the bites and the scratches. The only thing I don't understand is they did that, but they still left a lot of exposed skin. So there's plenty of other places they could have gotten scratched or bit. And it's like, leave your jackets on, dude. I mean, but anyway, neither here nor there. Here's another thing I really like about this movie, and I think part of it might have been because I got a little bit behind in some of the subtitles. I mentioned, of course, that I don't want to try to butcher the character names, but here's the thing: all the characters, of course, have names, but I don't think a lot of them ever even say them for the camera, or they say them once and then they're gone. So a lot of these characters don't have names. Awesome Dude refers to Busy Businessman as like, "Hey, asshole," a lot of times. And it's really funny how that goes from being a true insult to like almost a term of endearment throughout the entire situation. But these characters don't have names. They don't have what you would consider a typical identity. What we know about them, what we understand about them is simply through their actions. How they react, who they won't leave behind, who they're willing to sacrifice, how they feel about their friends dying. Everything we know about them is just through this interaction, and never once do they ever stop and say, "Oh, hi, my name is this," or "My name is that," as the young Fandon who actually turned me on to this movie said, "Well, how often in a crisis are you going to stop to introduce yourself?" Which is an excellent point. You really wouldn't. And I really liked that, because when it comes to movies like this, what I really enjoy, what really gets my heart going, what gets me excited or startled or whatever, is films where it really feels like this is what the on-the-ground reaction would be. If I can use an example from another film, like Cloverfield. One of the things I really love about Cloverfield is that our main characters have no idea where this monster came from. They have no idea what it wants. It's just there, and they are just reacting to it. And that, to me, makes it feel more real, because that is what it would feel like to really be in that situation. And I think this film does an excellent job of capturing that same feeling of this is kind of what it would be like if just a group of strangers were in this situation. You wouldn't get everybody's name. You'd be just more reacting to what's going on. I understand that they actually did explain kind of where the zombies came from, but I think I missed it. And I'm kind of glad I missed it, because again, I liked that I had no idea where the zombies came from, and by extension, the characters had no idea. They were just in the situation. This shit is happening, and you're just kind of dealing with it moment to moment. And I think the way this film is structured really makes it feel much more visceral and much more real. Of course, in a very heightened way, because of course it's a heightened reality, and a guy punching zombies and shit. Is the film perfect? No. The only real thing I can critique about the film is I think it is a zombie movie, and zombie movies tend to have two major flaws as I find them, outside of zombies just being boring. One, they are a bit overlong. Zombie movies and concepts tend to stretch out longer than I feel they really need to. And the other consequence of that is that as the film goes on and keeps going, the shit just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And yes, I know that, that's tension being ratcheted up. But I think there comes a time when you have just fucked people over so much, when adding another fuck up and another fuck you to the characters after another, you run the risk of it either getting tired or getting comical. And there were a couple of times towards the end of this movie where I was just like, oh, for the love of fucking God, really? Let's wrap this up. And that is not because it's a bad movie, it's just because I felt like it was stretching out a little bit too long. And if it had maybe one more pass through the editor, then and kept it a little tighter, I really think this would be right up there for me. And that's saying a lot for me, coming from not a horror movie fan and not a zombie movie fan. But it gives you everything. You know, busy businessman, so busy with business, has his somewhat predictable character arc. Again, he's basically Tim Allen in any 90s Disney film, and of course he has to realize the error of his ways and has to make a heroic sacrifice, and it's heartbreaking. It's really well done. I think it brings everything full circle. This one, I'm not going to say it surprised me, because I'd heard some good things about it, but I think it surprised me how much I enjoyed it. I think that was surprising, because that was not something that I was really planning on. I wasn't planning on going, wow, that was actually really good and interesting and fun and heartwarming and heartbreaking, and, you know, it checks a lot of boxes, and yet doesn't feel like any of them are out of place, and that's a hard thing to pull off. So, again, I'm lucky that I have friends who have different tastes than I do, because every now and then they convince me, or in Matt's case, sometimes force me to view things that I might otherwise have passed up, and you find a gem in there. And I think this one definitely counts. So I know this one is fairly popular amongst the zombie movie set. I know it was a big hit. It even spawned a sequel, which was out this year, I believe. So odds are, if you're a big time into Halloween or horror movies or zombie movies, you've probably already seen this one. But if not, I would still recommend giving it a look. It's a good film. And I'm just going back to how much of a wuss I am. One of the things I was concerned about is, I'm not a gore fan. I don't really want to see a lot of that. But I think I've come to the conclusion, I think Game of Thrones may have desensitized me a bit. Because everything, watching it, I was expecting way worse. And I'm like, well, you know, I've seen worse on Game of Thrones. That was exactly what I thought. And then I flashed back to a few years ago when I was directing, yeah, right, God forbid, when I was reviewing the last 50 Shades of Grey movie, and one of the things I said about that one was, you know, everyone's talking about these sex scenes, but, you know, I've seen more, you know, I've seen worse on Game of Thrones. I really think Game of Thrones has desensitized me. I really do. Again, this one snuck in to that last slot of the year, and I'm kind of glad it did. I think it's worth a look, and if you're an enthusiast or just someone who kind of wants to see a good movie that happens to have zombies in it, check this one out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So that is the final review for this year's This Is Halloween review. So this is something I was trying. I think we might make this an annual thing. I had a good time going back and looking at some of these movies. So maybe we'll be back next year. But in any rate, Drive Home Reviews will continue on in one form or another, because the holiday season is coming up, and Lord knows there are a lot of things around the holidays to review. So we will continue on until the bitter end. So thank you all for watching. Have a happy and safe Halloween. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.